Would you ever imagine going into a 7-Eleven and seeing a flash mob ripping the door apart, just ripping the door apart while they're kicking your ass? I mean, one person's like kicking the ass, going ooh 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 ooh, while the other person's like tearing down the door. Hey, give me that! I want that door. Ugh. No, it's a flash mob outrage at a 7-Eleven, unlike anything you'd ever forget. And as always, it's caught on tape. Take a look.
Another violent flash mob attack, this one targeting a 7-Eleven. Watch as two masked thugs try to strong-arm their way into the store in Anaheim, California. The clerk is using a broomstick to keep them at bay. Then this happens. The clerk is threatened with a large rock. They all storm in, grabbing everything in sight. Surveillance footage from inside the 7-Eleven shows the melee. He does his best to defend his store against the horde of looters until a display is thrown on top of him, knocking him down. After he gets up, another hoodlum shoves him from behind. This is the aftermath. The store is completely trashed, and this brave clerk with his face battered by the ordeal.
If I saw that happen at that 7-Eleven, I would have been beaten up. I would have had my ass beat or been part of that. I would have been arrested. But either way, you know, you win or lose. Alright, now the moment of truth y'all been waiting for. That's right. It is well, we're going to say that. We're going to say that for later, right? A bit later on, we're going to hear from one of the jurors of the Menendez brothers' first trial as they speak out for the very first time. We had that later. Alright. On to our next story. And believe me, sometimes we do stories from the news. Oftentimes we do stories that just touch your heart. Actually, okay. Here's what we're gonna do. I thought of a new great way because it inspired me from an old PBS show called Nightly Business Report. Every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. We're going to introduce you to something called Wall Street Break. Basically, what that means is we're going to check in on Wall Street. We're going to see how stocks are doing in Wall Street. Just like our stocks in the news with Paul Kangas. So, here are these hot stocks which were posted 50 minutes ago. So, these are today's hot stocks, the active gainers. So, Nvidia Corporation surprised at 127. The volume is up to 346. Negative 93 points for a change, down to TGIR. Super Microcomputer Incorporated, up those things, up those points. 200 and Napa, 10 points, $5 in, 47 million shares. IQ, with the Dow Industrial Average, the price is like $41,000, but the change is going down. NASDAQ, on the other hand, is $17,923.87, with with a drop of negative 213.95, and with the change of down up to $1.18. But after hours, the volume went up 12 million down to 10 million, but the lowest one ever had to be 3 million from Alphabet Incorporated. As for the bonds, well, 30-year Treasury was negative 20, like 0.20. 10-year Treasury 3.998, and the 5-year Treasury is just 3.830%, while the highest one, while the 3-month Treasury was 4.510%, and the 2-year Treasury is just 3.9. The currencies is just, with the British dollar, and so I thought I would try something new. And if you like Wall Street break, we'll like stock break, we'll do some stocks and news like they did on the Nightly Business Report. So it's just a little something to try out here. It's like we said before, Supermicro Incorporated was up 37 cents a share. So, yeah, it's just something we're going to try out. Something we're going to try out here. And if you like it, we'll continue doing it. If not, we'll stop it. All right, it is Menendez Monday. We're going to hear from the jurors, one of the jurors, and from the Menendez brothers. That's all. That's what we're going to cover throughout the next hour as we cover the Menendez brothers trial. New evidence could set them free, and when we return, we're going to hear from one of the jurors. Later on, the Menendez brothers, and later on, all the jurors. Please stay with us. It's Menendez Monday. That's right. Tonight is Menendez Monday on Give Me a Break, and what that means is we are going to dedicate today's episode talking about the whole Menendez brothers. And if you missed it, we showed you some new evidence that could be put into play and that could get them released from their life sentences. And for those who don't remember, it was 30 years ago when Lyle and Eric Menendez killed both their parents. The jury found both of them guilty and sentenced them to life in prison over the death penalty. And at that time, they spent their whole lives in sentences. Spent their whole life in prison, serving their sentences. But as the years went on, there was no evidence that was popped up until earlier this year. Until this year came around. What that evidence is a letter which could let them be set free. Which could lead to set free. Later on, we're going to hear from both the brothers, one from Barbara Walters, and one from today. But first, you're about to be one of the jurors in that first trial. In his very first interview, he or she tells their sides about how it was boys versus girls. Take a look.
A juror in the first Menendez trial says it was men versus women during jury deliberations. And if the trial happened today, they would have been acquitted.
It was a classic battle of the sexes. The men did not believe that Jose had been abusing his sons.
Hazel Thornton, juror number 9, spoke out on News Nation.
The men never did back down and accept the fact that they may have been abused.
News Nation senior correspondent Laura Engel.
She told us that the men did not believe the sexual abuse portion of the testimony that came in the trial. I asked Hazel why she believed the testimony, and she said it really came down to the actual words spoken from the Menendez brothers, to their body language, and also to the 50-plus witnesses that talked about the years of abuse that they say came at the hands of the father.
If they were tried again, I do think that the outcome would be very different.
The Menendez brothers' attorney, Mark Garagos, told me that he also believes society back then had a difficult time believing that the boys were victims of sexual abuse at the hands of their own father, Jose.
We were in a different era then. We have evolved as a society and as a culture. We understand these things now.
During the brothers' first trial, jurors heard their claims of abuse. The trial ended in a hung jury. In their second trial, the abuse claims were not allowed to be introduced, and they were found guilty of murder. Today, Netflix is out with a new documentary in which we hear from the Menendez brothers speaking out in new recorded interviews from prison.
My name is Eric Menendez.
My name is Lyle Menendez.
In the Menendez brothers documentary, Eric explains why the brothers killed their parents rather than just move out.
My father told me, no, you are not getting away from me. I was groomed to know that I could never get away. The idea had been whipped deep and trained into my brain. Lyle at this point believes that our parents could kill us.
What we also talked about was a thing called parricide. For those who don't know what it is, let's give you a quick recap of what it means. Basically, it means if you killed your parents, then you, in different states, then you can get a life sentence in prison. But however, if you did it in Texas because of abuse, then Texas, then you would not be sentenced. For those that have missed it, I believe it is recommended as you watch the story. Yeah, it is parricide. I mean, parental violence have happened. I mean, it's parental abuse. But in California, for parricide, they will not allow. They did not allow this. But Texas is the only state that will allow the jury to hear stories of abuse. If that abuse have happened, see, it's California. I mean, Texas, you have the right to bear arms, but in California, you have the right to bear arms in California. In Texas, but in California, you have the legal right to jaywalk. Take away the guns, go do some jaywalking. It's not that way. It's not the way the world goes around here. But you see, here's the thing I have a problem with. They killed their parents because they were abusing them. Okay, well, here's the problem here. If you believe that if you as a child believe your parents are abusing you, there's CPS. You don't go get a gun and start killing your parents, then go on trial and just say, well, my father abused me, my mom abused me, this, that, and the third. So yeah, I got a gun, I killed him. Because they were abusing me. It's just not right though, You don't get to decide what you can do. So, what does that leave you to believe, boys and girls? The right thing that you need to do, talk, communicate. That's key. If they ever feel like they're abusing you, leave marks and bruises, you have the right to call 911 and your parent and say, well, my mom and dad abused me and left marks on me. Let the bruises. Show a picture of the bruises, and then it'd be like, okay, well, CPS is going to take him, you're going to be arrested for child abuse. Child abuse is very dangerous. It's a very serious charge. The children can be taken away in foster care. Try and remember that, parents. Alright. Coming up, the Menendez brothers, back in '96, as they speak out for the very first time. And later on, more jurors from 1994 speak out to Stone Phillips. Stay with us. There they are, the Menendez brothers, back in 1996 in a 2020 Barbara Walters exclusive interview. If you were around during that time, you've heard two of the brothers spoke out to Barbara Walters in an exclusive interview with 2020. Not forced to self a word. But if you were there watching an interview, you might have heard your own verdict saying, well, guilty, guilty, not guilty, not guilty, 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 not guilty. A lot of guilties and not guilties. Tonight, you, for the very first time, are going to see and hear the very first exclusive interview with the brothers since that trial. What do they have to say about all of this? Was there any abuse at all? Here's Barbara Walters.
Suddenly, a brutal volley of shotgun fire. Jose Menendez is killed by a close-in shot to the head. He has 5 other shotgun wounds. Kitty Menendez's body is riddled with shotgun pellets.
She had 10 wounds on her. She was getting...
The voice of Lyle Menendez, then 21 years old, who tells police that he and his brother Eric, then 18, discovered the bodies as they returned home from a movie. Lyle and Eric Menendez lied successfully for months, but if their crime was a horror movie, their undoing was the stuff of soap operas went on trial for their lives.
I was just firing as I went into the room. I just started firing.
In what direction?
In front of me.
What was in front of you?
My parents.
And I remember firing directly at him.
You reloaded? Said yes.
Yes.
And what did you do after you reloaded?
I ran around, shot my mom.
When their turn came, Eric and Lyle Menendez told a rapt courtroom that the murder of their parents was an act of self-defense. They said they were in fear of their lives from a controlling father who had been sexually abusing them.
He raped me.
Did you cry?
Yes.
Did you bleed?
Yes.
Were you scared?
Very.
Lyle said his abuse stopped when he was 8, but that he didn't know until just before the murders that Eric was being molested too.
What do you believe was the originating cause of you and your brother ultimately winding up shooting your parents?
Me telling.
You telling what?
Me telling Lyle that,
You telling Lyle what? Was it you telling Lyle about something that was happening?
My dad had been molesting me.
The brothers' testimony was compelling and harshly, though none of them could actually confirm the allegations of sexual abuse. The jurors could not decide between verdicts of murder and manslaughter.
I find that the jury is hopelessly deadlocked, and the court declares a mistrial.
What went through your minds when you heard that verdict? First degree murder, guilty.
That I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison without any possibility of ever getting released. And you're devastated. I was devastated.
Could have been death. Did you think that?
I was terrified that they would give either one of us death, and that's scary.
It's important to you to stay together when you get moved to the state prison?
Very important. That is what's gotten us through these 6 years and through our life. The family that Eric and I grew up in, we had to be there for each other throughout, and it really created a bond that gets us through very rough periods.
Some people might say, why should we put them together? I mean, look what they did. They should be punished as much as possible. Let's separate them. What do you say to that? You know people will say that, son.
There's nothing to say to that. What we did, it was awful, and I wish I could go back. We will spend the rest of our life in prison, but if we're not put in the same prison, there's a good probability I will never see him again. And that some things that you cannot take, and there's some things that you can endure. With everything taken away, it'll be the last. It's the last thing you can take.
Do you think the media has portrayed you fairly? Can you tell?
I don't know if anyone can be portrayed fairly in the media, who they are.
Well, let me say it. There are people, a great number of people, who think that you two are spoiled brats, that you are evil, that you are monsters. What do you say to them?
That's not who I am, but I can't defend that. Because I came from a family of wealth, doesn't make me spoiled.
I would be surprised if anybody that was present at the trial and saw the whole thing rather than snippets on the news would feel that.
A jury found you both guilty.
Right, but I don't think you weren't guilty because they found you spoiled.
Or evil.
Or evil.
Just a normal, I'm just a normal kid.
Oh, Eric, you're a normal kid who killed your parents.
I know.
And you still say you're a normal kid?
Well, I didn't have normal experiences, but I am. I did that, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about what happened and wish that I could take that moment back or change what happened. But it's hard to live with that.
Do you feel remorse?
Tremendous remorse. And I think
there's tremendous pain. I mean, from the second that I got back to the house after the shootings, I saw what happened and I said, this is wrong. This is awful. How could this have happened? I couldn't accept it.
You couldn't accept it, but you called the police. You pretended that you hadn't done it. You cried. You went off on a spending spree. I mean, we all read about it. You bought Rolexes, you bought cars, you didn't say, oh my God, what have I done, and turn yourself in.
Well, that's not really what.
Well, I sort of stuck it all together, but.
Yeah, you did a good job at it. We got back to the house, the police were there, and it was a matter of telling him you did it, or just saying, I don't know who did it. And that's what we did. And if I could go back, perhaps I'd say I did it.
And part of that started from the fact that we waited afterwards, and the police did not come. And in that time that we waited, you know, we did make a bad decision to not have to.
We expected the police to be there. I mean,
you expected the police to come there and arrest you.
12 shots in the middle of Beverly Hills on a Sunday night, and no one calls the police. We're waiting at the house. No one shows up. And I still can't believe it.
So you called the police, but at that point you had already decided.
We had decided not to.
You weren't going to say anything.
We were very stunned, and we felt that we would go to jail, obviously, and it was a selfish reason to just not want to have to go through that.
What about spending the money? You know, bars, watches, invested in businesses, the good life.
Well, it was the same life before or afterwards.
With more money.
With more money, but I didn't know what to do with the money. It got to a point where I have all this money and so much pain. I don't know what to do with it, and eventually.
I don't know. You're losing me. I would think that you would be in such grief that you wouldn't be able to buy Rolexes and invest in businesses. Explain to me. Let me understand. I'm the public.
I don't think that it's understandable. I mean, people react to some traumatic event like that in different ways.
You went to your psychologist, Dr. Ozil, and told him that you had committed this crime.
It got to a point where I could no longer live. I felt that I was the worst person on earth, and it got to a point where I couldn't live with myself anymore, and I needed help. And so I went to him, and that is what the catalyst was for me getting arrested in Lyle.
You've had a lot of therapy.
6 years of intense therapy.
How are you different than the man who came in here?
I'm 6 years older. I'm a lot more mature. I came in here as an 18-year-old kid who didn't know anything about life.
What did you learn about yourself?
I learned that I learned what love was about. I learned what love was about because of my grandmother, because of all my relatives who didn't say, I can't believe you did this. Instead they said, Eric, I know who you are. You're not this type of person. You're not the type of person who could do this for no reason.
Have you had therapy, Lyle?
The same therapy, and it really works to just have someone you can communicate with that's willing to listen all our lives, it was just sort of fending off things.
It almost sounds like prison was a good thing for you.
It was.
It
I
was.
mean, at first, I killed my parents, and I spent 6 months out there in horrible agony because I had done this. I mean, a year before, I told my mother how much I loved her. I could not have imagined doing this even a week before to her. I adored her. And then suddenly you're arrested, and everyone can know you did it, and you can finally tell people, and it's a relief.
Lyle, you're looking at your brother like you almost never heard this before. Tell me how you felt.
You know, for me, emotionally being in prison conditions was really not, emotionally was not a shocking difference from life we had lived, because we lived really a very stressful, fearful life, and to me, it was kind of like, I felt I should be punished, and it didn't feel good, but there was a part of you that feels like,
That's right.
It's better.
You get a lot of mail?
We still get a tremendous amount of mail.
Hundreds?
Hundreds, thousands over the years.
We asked your lawyers to give us a sample of some of your letters. A great many of them seem to deal with some people who have been abused themselves and relate to you. Lyle, what do you say to people who write to you?
A lot of people that have written were very, they drew a lot of strength from watching the trial and from seeing Eric and I. And I've gotten mail after the verdict, people discouraged. And I wanted to say to them to not lose hope because of this one case and this one verdict, very unique situation here, and that this does not mean that if they go get help, people won't believe them, or people will treat them harshly, or they'll be ridiculed. I don't feel they will be.
That's not to say do what we did. Don't do what we did, but don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid of
People that want to reach out to social workers for help but are ashamed or afraid.
Do you also get love letters?
Yeah,
Do
some.
you find that strange?
It's a strange phenomenon that a lot of love letters come in from people that don't know you at all.
Do either one of you have girlfriends? Do either one of you have someone who cares particularly about you now at this point in your life?
I do. I have someone who I love very much and is a saint to put up with everything that comes with this.
Can you tell us who she is?
Yeah, her name is Anna Erickson, and I hope that we can get married, even though it's a very limited relationship because of where we are. The exchange of love and sharing, it keeps you in touch with yourself and it's softer, and otherwise you can become very hard and cold in here.
Is this someone you knew before prison?
No.
This is someone who began to write to you and meet you?
She wrote me many years ago, but I've come to know her well. But just someone that I met through the mail.
And she wants to marry you?
She does.
Eric?
No, not at the moment.
You're not going to meet a lot in prison.
No, I probably won't. It's hard. Lyle's more able to have that type of relationship.
Eric, you know that the prosecutor brought up the fact that you might have been a homosexual, and that this might have caused some of the fury on your father's part.
Yes, he did.
I didn't hear about girlfriends.
They were there.
I guess what I just have to say to you is, are you gay?
No. The prosecutor brought that up because I was sexually molested, and he felt in his own thinking that if I was sodomized by my father, that I must have enjoyed it, and therefore I must be gay, and the people that are gay out there must be sexually molested, or they wouldn't be, is what he felt. And it was upsetting to hear, but I'm not gay. But a lot of gay people write and feel connected to me.
A problem at the trial was the gender bias, that because we were dealing with males and in an incest family, that there's sort of perceptions that, well, maybe it was something that he wanted, something that he allowed to happen, that he shouldn't be allowed to feel afraid because he's a male. I really felt that people might have seen this case very differently if it were a sister that I was protecting, or that was involved in this, and not a brother.
You know, this whole business of abuse excuse, that you were abused by your parents, sexually abused, emotionally abused by this tough, unyielding father. But there are lots of people who are abused sexually in other ways, and they don't kill their parents, and you've been ridiculed for this abuse excuse. What do you say about it?
Abuse excuse is a word that Alan Dershowitz made up, not knowing anything about the case. To simplify it to its simplest degree, if a person is raped, man or woman, and she kills the man who raped her, is it an excuse that the reason she killed him is because she was raped? Of course not. I certainly never felt that what I did was justified or right. It was just a question of how wrong was it.
That was a big misperception about this case, that it was about justification or excuse. And my brother and I essentially pled guilty. That was very hard for me to hear the ridicule about that, because I really felt that Eric and I, we could have gone to trial like most people and just sort of, we weren't there, it wasn't us that had that trial.
What do you mean, we could have gone to trial, we weren't there?
Well, you could go to trial and just say that I was, chipping golf balls at the time and I wasn't there. And Eric and I went to trial and said, we did this.
There were tapes.
Tapes became admissible because we said we did it. Ma and I fought because he felt that telling the world that Dad was a sexual torturer was killing Dad twice. And he did not want to kill Dad twice. And he fought and he said, I don't want to go up there, I'm not going to take the stand, I'm not going to do it. And then when he did, there was a great outpouring, but there was also people laughing at him, and it was strange.
Eric, you were able to tell your psychologist that you had killed your parents, but you were not able to tell your psychologist that your father had abused you?
Unless you've been molested, you can't realize how hard it is to tell.
Because of shame?
Because of shame.
The kind of shame, they say, that drove them to kill. Festering family secrets that would explode into violence.
So what were those family secrets? When we come back, we're going to hear more from the Menendez brothers. And later, the jurors speak. Stay with us. Returning to our story, if you've seen this Barbara Walters interview exclusive with the Menendez brothers, you might know what you were talking about. If you hadn't, you might have had your own verdict of guilty or not guilty. So far, what we have heard is basically all about the money, the psychologist, and why they wanted to kill their parents. Now that comes to the question of secrets, were there any family secrets that could have led to something like this? Again, Barbara Walters.
Describe your relationship with your father. What words come into your mind?
Brutal. Painful. Torturous. And yet I thought that he was the most powerful and brilliant person I had ever met.
I was his firstborn son. That was very important to him. And my bond with him was, I thought, strong because we had been through so much together. But it was difficult to see the things that were going on.
Things that were going on, that is, when you learned that he was sexually molesting your brother?
He had sexually molested me before I was a teenager. And it was a much different experience than Eric's.
Because you were little?
Because I was little, I guess.
You know, there are some questions that everybody asks, like, why didn't you run away?
I wish that I could have. I tried to run away when I was 12, and my father found me. He caught me and said, if you ever run away, I will kill you, I will find you, and I will kill you.
Suppose you left and you, I don't know what, became a waiter and moved away. You still thought he'd find you?
He would find me, and probably kill me. I thought for certain he would kill
You
me.
still think that?
Oh, absolutely.
Did you love your mother or like your mother?
I loved my mother and I tried to help her. My mother was a person in a lot of pain, and she was alcoholic and she was suicidal.
Did she know about the abuse, the sexual abuse?
She knew.
And didn't do anything?
She knew, and it doesn't seem that she did anything.
Do you still think about the night of the murder?
Every day.
You both do? Tell me as clearly as you can why you murdered your parents that night.
First thing that comes to mind is terror. I was so afraid. A few days before, I had said to myself, I'm never going to let my father touch me again. After I told Lyle that it had been continuing on, I said to myself, I'm never going to let him touch me again. And just before the shootings, my dad told me to get to my room and that he would be there in a minute, and he was going to come up and there was going to be sex, and it was like an explosion in my mind.
But you bought the guns. It wasn't something that just happened that moment. You thought about it.
No.
You bought the guns in advance. They just weren't in the house.
Yes, we bought the guns in advance.
So this
We
didn't
bought the
just happen
guns.
that moment.
We bought the guns. There was a series of confrontations and blow-ups in the house. My dad, when it first was revealed that I had told Lyle about the secret, my dad said to Lyle, you're going to tell everyone, and I'm not going to let that happen.
Take me through your mind, Lyle.
I cannot separate and say this is why this happened. My father was threatening us, and so there was fear, but there was great, there was anger on my part, and my mother was aware and had allied herself with my father, and there was a great deal of confusion. This happened all in just 3 days, and I wish I'd give anything to just turn back that one page of my life.
The other big question. You killed your father, who was molesting you. Why did you kill your mother?
On Thursday night before, in one of the explosions, I was running downstairs and I was crying, and my mother was on the couch. She had been drinking, and she said, what's wrong with you? And I said, nothing, you wouldn't understand. And she said, oh, I understand. What do you think, I'm stupid? And she told me that she knew, that she had known all my life what my father was doing. And it was like I didn't even know who she was anymore. And I just saw Dad and Mom as the same person at that point. I saw them as a single person.
And really the first time that this secret about what was happening with Dad and Eric was discussed openly in the family in a very angry way. I don't know about Eric, but I completely lost control of myself. And in that time, I didn't separate. I knew my mother and my father. It was just adrenaline and fear and anger. There is no explanation.
But you had thought about this earlier because you had bought the guns several days before.
We knew that this could end, a violent confrontation could occur because my father had threatened my life.
You still think your father would have killed you for revealing the secret? You both still feel that?
There's no question.
Really?
I still believe that. I don't believe that he was in the process of killing us that moment, that evening.
Yeah.
But and I don't think that it might seem, because there are so few cases that come to the public's attention like this, that this has never occurred ever before in the country. And in fact, there are over 200 parricides a year that involve incest families. And so, I felt it completely then, and now I believe that, but I would not shoot my parents now, no matter what.
How now would you have resolved it? Now, almost 7 years later? What do you think you should have done?
I would have never told. I got Lyle into this. I went to him and I said, Lyle, I can't live anymore with what's going on, and got him involved. He was way to go. They had bought him a condominium. He was going to Princeton. He had all the money.
So it's your fault for telling your brother?
It's my fault. And I got him involved and said, I need your help. And 5 days later, my parents were dead.
So it's your fault.
That's completely my fault.
He was suicidal at the time, and it was just a last thing to reach out to. And I, obviously who was going to reach out to. And I decided to confront my father rather than just sort of not say anything and just have Eric and I leave, which if I could go back, that's what I would do. I would just say, Eric's old enough now, he wants to leave.
Have you forgiven yourself?
I don't think it's possible.
Lyle, are you at any kind of peace?
More so than maybe Eric, because at this point, for some reason, well before the verdict, I was resigned to bad things. And I have, I think, found a place where I can look forward and try to have hope and share myself more with people. And
Hope of what?
hope of living a life that I can be more proud of.
How in prison?
You're confined, but there must be, even just in writing, people that need help.
If you can help them and convince a single person that has been through our situation that the last thing in the world they should do is act out violently, then you find meaning in your life.
If you could say something to your mother and your father, I'm sure you have in your own minds, what would you say?
I am so sorry. I forgive them completely for anything they have done to us. If I had one wish, it would be able to have one conversation with them or to change places with them.
I hope someday that I can be with them and have some sort of conversation about what happened. It is one of the awful things is that we couldn't communicate that weekend, and I can't. And just that I love them, and that I believe, despite everything that happened, that they really loved us, and that things just went awry.
Our interview is over. Deputies now arrive to take Eric and Lyle Menendez back to the cell blocks. They were handcuffed and chained for the long walk back. Their legs had been shackled throughout the interview. This had been one of their infrequent opportunities to see one another in jail. The guards would now take each of them to their separate cells, and to the certainty of the rest of their lives in prison.
Wow. You can always picture yourself in that prison, being with your brother, talking to them wall by wall. But in this case, they were separated because we won't know why. When we come back, Stone Phillips and the jury. Stay with us. Now that we've heard from the Menendez brothers and one of the jurors, you're about to meet three of the jurors from 30 years ago who looked at all the evidence for 6 months. 6 months. But could not come to a decision that led to a mistrial with the hung jury. You may have had your verdict years ago if you watched the trial. But what did the actual jury had to say? Here's Stone Phillips.
Believes there is no reasonable probability of our reaching a verdict or verdicts without violence to our individual judgments.
The trial that began with 2 juries ended with both badly divided.
We just split. It was very difficult for us.
Eric's jury split early and evenly along gender lines. The men arguing for murder, the women holding firm for manslaughter. For 19 days they were deadlocked. The atmosphere in the jury room so tense that by the end they were shouting at each other, the women accusing the men of sexism and homophobia.
I'm glad you're not.
Lyle's jury stayed at it for a record 25 days. the jurors shifting positions frequently as they worked in vain for a verdict.
Sometimes it was 7 to 5 for second degree. Sometimes it was 9 to 3 for voluntary manslaughter.
Over the weekend, I talked with 4 members of Lyle's jury, 3 who argued for manslaughter, 1 who voted for murder. What was the prosecution's finest moment in this trial, you think?
The pictures.
The pictures at the crime scene.
The crime scene. The autopsy pictures. We couldn't deny the photographs. It happened. I mean, some people in our jury room wanted those photos up every day so that we would have to look at them. That was really down. We could look at them if we wanted to. And we
So you
passed
decided
around.
not to post them in the room.
Right, that we had to stare at them every day. There'd be no way.
The jury was profoundly affected by the prosecution's gruesome pictures and by the brothers' tape-recorded confession to their therapist, Dr. Jerome O'Zeal. While the defense claimed the confession was made under questionable circumstances, some jurors felt it spoke for itself.
I don't think he put Lyle under a tremendous amount of stress to be able to get him to talk on tape and confess to the killings, and Lyle knew exactly what he wanted to say about the murder.
But it was here that for many jurors, the prosecution's case began to fall short, as they started to focus on the character of the man who made the tape. Not very credible.
I'm being kind.
These jurors told us they agreed with the defense. The doctor was unethical, unbelievable, and may have been trying to blackmail the brothers when he taped their confession. Was there a lot of debate and discussion about that? Was that a central point?
Yeah. Yes, especially at the beginning. Yeah. We dissected practically every word of that or every page.
And what were people listening for? The tone of voice?
The words, planning. You know, they planned it or let Eric sleep on it. Sometimes very damning words if you just took those words out. But I think you have to take everything that was involved in why that tape was made and had it be considered.
What about the fact that, although they confessed to the killings on that tape recording, there was no mention of abuse or fear for their lives being the motivation?
We definitely discussed it a lot. But there was a lot of evidence provided again by various people that they were brought up that you don't talk about anything. You covered up everything. You lied about everything. So I think it would be very difficult for them to talk about that.
On the stand, Lyle found it very difficult to talk about reloading his shotgun to finish off his badly wounded mother.
What did you do after you reloaded?
I ran around and shot my mom.
Prosecutors said that showed the brothers were not acting in self-defense. But these jurors felt that Lyle had been so traumatized by the shootings, he might not have remembered exactly what happened. What did the jury make of the fact that Lyle reloaded the gun that night?
It was discussed. I don't know. It's not even really sure that happened.
Even though Lyle said he reloaded,
Well, but I got the impression that Lyle wasn't real sure of all the events.
One point the prosecution hammered away at repeatedly was the motive. It was greed, they said, and for evidence they pointed to the brothers' spending spree right after the shootings. But these jurors said the brothers didn't have to kill their parents to spend their money.
They always did it all the time. Huge limits. Yeah.
And even this juror, who voted for murder, agreed that on this point, the prosecution hadn't been convincing. You think greed was a factor, but not the main
factor. No. It was, he had his own control over his own money. And not because he was afraid of getting his money.
Ultimately, it was that issue, why the brothers killed their parents, on which the trial turned. The defense claimed that the brothers killed because they felt they were in imminent danger from their parents. The jurors accepted that the brothers feared for their lives, then they were instructed to vote for manslaughter. Did you believe that the brothers were not only victims of abuse, but feared for their lives that night?
I did.
All three of you did.
Mm-hmm.
What was the critical piece of the puzzle that led you to believe that?
There were witnesses that had nothing to gain by saying the things they said. They convinced me that the home that these men grew up in, I could certainly believe that they thought their parents could absolutely do anything and not have to pay for it.
As for those college applications found at the crime scene, the prosecution said that showed the parents weren't planning on killing the brothers. These jurors said all that counted was what was in the brothers' minds.
We don't believe that they were planning on murdering them, but we think Lyle believed that they were, and that's the difference.
It was critical in all of your minds that you believed that they believed they were going to be killed.
Correct. Yes.
Even jurors who didn't believe that fear was a factor agreed that the defense had won the point. You say fear was a brilliant defense because you can't disprove it.
That's right.
But you didn't buy it.
Yes. They weren't that much scared just because that they didn't choose to do that. You didn't want to do that. You decided, well, this is going to fight that. This is it. Tie them all to just get rid of them.
To believe that fear was behind the killings, jurors had to fundamentally agree with the defense's version of life as a member of the Menendez family.
I think Jose was always playing games, mental games, with Lyle, and I think he knew he had Eric under control. And Jose knew how to push buttons, and he pushed them to the limit. And he just pushed one too many.
In your mind, is Lyle an evil young man who is halfway home, getting away with murder?
He learned a lot from his dad. Just like his dad. If you want to believe his dad was evil, his dad Lyle's evil.
Like father, like son.
Just like my father, like son.
These then were the issues that divided the jurors. And in the last days of the deliberations, Lyle's jury struggled one last time to reach common ground. A compromise verdict was proposed: manslaughter in the killing of Jose, a murder conviction for the death of Kitty.
It was tempting. Yeah, it was. But I think, yeah. If I was on trial for whatever, I would want to be a part of it with my life.
In the end, they came in with nothing at all. The prosecutor says you sent the wrong message. That children can kill their parents, and the punishment will be neither swift nor certain. I just thought of that.
I wasn't concerned with public opinion when I made my decision. I feel like I was following the law. I feel the same way. We could not take what was going to happen, what the outcome was. That was not to be our consideration. So we didn't. You just don't kill your parents. If Kitty or Jose was acting at a point where they were going to go ahead and stab them, shoot them, or whatever, then I can see them defending themselves. But none of that happened, and they just decided, well, we just going to take them out and tired of them. So I don't think that was right at all. It was horrible.
Gruesome killing, defendants who admittedly lied, covered up, and ultimately confessed, and yet no verdict. Some people will ask, what more does it take?
Proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
The law.
The law.
With no verdict the juries could agree on, Lyle and Eric Menendez are in jail tonight. And it could cost taxpayers as much as $1 million to retry them.
$1 million with the retrial. Unlike anything you've never seen.
In a moment, legal experts look at the case. What went wrong? What does it say about the criminal justice system? And what does it mean to future cases?
We'll have that for you sometime on a Wednesday. But when we come back, we have for you the very first interview, not the one from Barbara Walters, the very recent one from it, for the very first time. We'll play your portion, and then legal experts, and then we'll have a viral break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Menendez Monday. If you've been just tuning into this broadcast, to give you a quick recap, tonight and throughout every Monday, we're going to be focusing on the Menendez brothers. As they get ready to, as the retrial begins, new evidence is popping up. So far, we heard them for the very first time with Barbara Walters. We've heard from one of the jurors. We heard from 4 jurors. Now we're going to hear, now what you're about to hear is new audio, which is now put into play in the trial. Could it be new evidence that it wasn't manslaughter, but in fact, parricide? Take a look.
I remember when the verdict came down, it was first degree. It was so daunting that I was in shock.
For the first time in 30 years, Lyle and Eric Menendez is speaking out amid renewed interest in the infamous murder case that captured the world's attention.
I went to the only person that had ever helped me, that had ever protected me. And then, ultimately, this happened. He was arrested because of me. I wanted to know. In a way, I did not protect Lyle.
Audio tapes are part of the Menendez brothers' new Netflix documentary. The siblings, who shot and killed their parents in their Beverly Hills home in 1989, opening up about what they said on the witness stand in the historic televised trial. Eric reacting to his brother's testimony.
I remember when he apologized to me on the stand for molesting me. He had never said he was sorry.
The trial making headlines again 3 decades later as Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon's office evaluates new alleged evidence and public calls for resentencing.
We're not saying that there was anything wrong with the original trial. We have been given evidence.
Famed defense attorney Mark Garagos claims Eric sent his cousin a letter detailing the abuse 9 months prior to the murders. Garagos also says a member of the popular 80s boy band Menudo, Roy Rasulo, says he too was molested by Eric and Lyle's father in the family home. Adding to a growing call for the alleged abuse the boys suffered at the hands of their own father to be reevaluated, they claim it went on for years and that they feared for their own lives.
It was a culture of silence, and that culture of silence existed up until the 90s, and I think it finally got broken in the 2000s.
Now, prosecutors maintain the brutal murders were motivated by money. The next hearing is November 26th, and the DA says the final decision will be his. Guys.
Okay, Candace, thanks very much. Our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams, is here. What's the DA doing here?
Right, so I don't quite understand the timing, right? The DA...
So on November 26th, we're going to be hearing from that. We're going to be hearing from them. On November 26th, it'll probably be on a Tuesday. So we're going to have Menendez Tuesday on November 26th. So any new developments, we'll let you know during the trial. So every Monday, we're going to... Well, we're not going to do every Monday, but you probably know what I mean here. Basically, until September 26th, if there's any new developments, I'll let you know. But that was new already released, and there's any new evidence we can, and you can feel free to watch the Netflix series all about the Menendez brothers on Netflix. So if you got Netflix, check Netflix, because it's probably on Netflix. It is on Netflix. Alright. Well, actually, before we go on viral break, here's what we have for you this week. Coming up on a Wednesday, the bad seed of Eric Smith. Also a story about where your tax dollars are going, plus a story about aliens. And then on a Friday, Rodney Wilson tells a story about the controversy surrounding coming forward to his students about why he was gay. And next Monday, Diane Sawyer with a 2-part report all about the Menendez brothers back in May 17, 1990. So that's all coming up this week. Now, time for tonight's viral break. And I guarantee you're going to want to laugh hard when you start to see I guarantee you. I guarantee you, I don't know. Now it's time for Angry Grandpa. It's tonight's viral break. I mean, if you remember the Angry Grandpa show with millions of views, take a look at this one. If you've been watching this Angry Grandpa, I mean, if you didn't know, Angry Grandpa, Charles Green, also known as Angry Grandpa, died because of cancer. But now everyone has subscribed to his YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers. Damn, mother hecker, man. But this is one of my favorites, 5.5 million views. We set Grandpa's tent on fire.
Damn, it's chilly on fire.
Five 5.5 million views. And even the fire won't even tell you. That's all for this edition of Menendez Monday. We'll see you again next Monday for Menendez Monday. And we'll also see you again for Give Me a Break Wednesday. For all of us here at YouTube, and give me a break. Stop bullying, speak up. Concentration, not strength. No jaywalking. Have a good night.